Hi, I'm Ed Griffin, and this is a very memorable day today. It's December the 13th, 2014. And the reason it's memorable is because I'm the founder of Freedom Force International, and that organization has been in existence since 2002. But it was only today that it really got lifted off of the pad, you might say, and sent into orbit. By that I mean is that up until now, even though we've had thousands of members, and even though those members are in, I think, 58 countries right now, it still has been pretty much a one-man show with me. I've tried to provide the ideas and the concepts and the structure. To a large extent, I've funded it out of my own pocket and gladly been able to do that, as a matter of fact. But it's always bothered me because as a one-man show, you're always in danger of what happens if something happens to you. Does the show stop? And of course it would. So I've been very concerned over the last couple of years of putting some wheels under this movement because it's a powerful movement, and we need younger people and other wiser heads than mine to make it go. So that was what happened today. We actually formed a board of directors, is what normally what you would call it. We call it the Congress and the Leadership Council. And we have now an organization that has a life of its own, has leadership, it has adopted procedures and strategies and tactics and everything that you need for an organization to sustain and continue and grow. So who cares? Another organization, does the world need that? And obviously not. But this kind of an organization is a little bit different. Freedom Force International is an organization, I jokingly say, it's an organization for non-joiners because it's a group of people who generally are kind of loners. They don't like to get involved in group activities. They don't like all the bickering and backstabbing and the power struggles that go on in so many organizations. They don't like political action because they know there's a lot of corruption there, and so forth. But so they come together nevertheless because they know they have to do that because we're fighting against the enemies of freedom. And we know that there's power in numbers, and we have a strategy for fighting the enemy of freedom, which we have identified. It has a name. It's called collectivism. Collectivism is an ideology. It's an ideology that has infected the world over the past 100 years. It's the concept of big government and small people. It's the concept that all problems of the world have to be solved by government. And we've been taught that, those of us who went through government schools, we were taught that this is the way it should be. So consequently, every time there's a problem, the people of the world say, well, let's turn to government for the answer. Government do this, government do that. Government needs more funding, more power. And then we complain because, well, what do you know? We were losing our freedom. Government is taxing us too much. Government has too much control over us. And that's exactly what we were asking it to do. So all of these things are kind of background information of what's going on in my mind today. All of this now is going to come to an end because our organization is putting together people, drawing together people from all around the world that are fed up with that kind of a concept, this idea of collectivism. And we have a strategy for changing that. And I'm so happy that here today we have with us a fellow who I had never met in person until last night. And today he was elected as the first speaker of the first Congress of Freedom Force International. And his name is Edward Goodliffe. And I'm so impressed and so grateful to have him on board. And I'm going to turn the camera, so to speak, to him now and let him tell you what he told us today of how he became involved in this movement and why he's with Freedom Force and how he thinks it will play a role in the future. Ed, by the way, thank you again for coming on board. I really appreciate it.
That's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Edward Goodliffe, and I am a member of Freedom Force International, and amazingly enough, today I was elected. And what is my official title?
Well, you're Speaker of the Congress.
I'm Speaker of the Congress. And my journey here has taken quite a few years. I first came across Mr. Griffin's books a long time ago, and being a staunch individualist, I resonated with what he had to say. His books were truly inspirational. I first came across his book on the United Nations, The Fearful Master, and was truly shocked by what I read in that book. And later, after that, I read The Creature from Jekyll Island, and my knowledge of the banking system increased greatly after reading that. In fact, it was probably the best history book I've ever read. It was truly fascinating. Well, anyway, over the years, in fact, throughout my whole life, I have been an individualist, even though I didn't really know that that was the title of what I was many years ago. And I grew up in Britain. I was born in Britain, I grew up in Britain. And during those years of my teenage years, I suppose I would say, I watched Britain falling apart. I watched socialism destroying the country. This collectivism was taking the very country apart. I saw industry shutting down. The great motorcycle industry, that went by the wayside. The motor vehicles, the cars, trucks and buses were all going down. The steel industry was collapsing. Everything seemed to be going. And why was this happening? I assumed it was largely incompetence, and I migrated to Western Canada, to Alberta, where I started a nail factory, and I manufactured nails. Now, I listened to the politicians there telling me that we encourage small business, and it's all very well for them to say that, but when you find out that they're not really encouraging it at all, they're going out of their way to stamp out small business, and really what they're more interested in is looking after the big corporations, what you would call, I suppose, crony capitalism or corporate fascism. And this is all collectivist in nature. And I didn't really realize the difference in the political structure until I read Mr. Griffin's book, where he described so clearly the difference between collectivism and individualism. And I realized, and I've realized all along, that individual rights are absolutely paramount. And over the years, group rights have steadily eroded away the individual's freedom. And it has got to the point today that it is simply desperate. We have lost so many freedoms. We cannot continue like this and have any semblance of a free life. We will have all decisions made for us by government, and we just simply cannot allow this to happen. Through indifference and the fact that most people are too busy watching the television, watching the football, or whatever it is that's distracting them, they are not watching what is going on behind the scenes, which is effectively stripping us of all our freedoms. I joined Freedom Force International because I want to turn that tide back. It is time that we stood up for individualism. There are no forests, there are only trees. If you look after the trees, the forests will look after themselves. This is what we have to do. We have to look after the individual. Freedom Force International, the aim of this organization is to recapture those individual rights. And I intend to do my very best to further that aim. It is a bit like we are scaling a massive mountain to get away from the tyranny that is coming from behind us. We are scaling a mighty mountain to get to the other side, to the green pastures and happiness. And it is my aim to inspire as many people as possible to join with us to recapture our individual freedoms.
Well spoken, Edward. Thank you so much. And there's nothing I can add except that if you who are watching this have any spark of interest in the work that we're trying to do through Freedom Force, I invite you to come on to the website, and there's plenty to read there, plenty to think about. We have nothing to sell. It's just a think tank type of website. We just have ideas and strategies and tactics. So come to Freedom Force International. That's freedomforceinternational.org. See you there.